I think the thing is that this isn't the best that we can get. And I do think that we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Senate Democrats, which are blocking crucial items in a Democratic agenda for for reasons that I don't think hold a lot of water.
Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speaking out against obstructionist activity, behavior, not just among Republicans, but more importantly, amongst Democratic lawmakers. And it's an important issue to call out, but more importantly, an important issue to strategize about, which it appears progressive lawmakers are finally starting to really consider and put into action. Now, AOC spoke out specifically in regard to the so-called bipartisan senators who have proposed a counteroffer to Joe Biden's infrastructure package, which would dedicate more than $2 trillion to infrastructure. Well, this group of bipartisan lawmakers are only offering a measly $560 billion in new spending, and are also arguing that some of the coronavirus relief spending should be reappropriated specifically for the infrastructure package, which makes absolutely no sense. And I like seeing that AOC is fighting back against that. So let's take a look at more of what she had to say.
A group of 5 Republican, 5 Democratic senators is proposing $1.2 trillion in an infrastructure compromise deal. $600 billion of that is new spending, they say, no tax hikes to pay for it. Would you vote yes or no on that package if it comes before you in the House?
You know, I think from what we've seen so far, and particularly the lack of climate action as well, I think adding to the severe lowering of our scope and scale and what we're seeking to do on ambition, I doubt it, frankly, in the current state of that proposal. And I think one of the things that's really important to communicate is that this isn't just 1.7 trillion. This is about an overall investment spread out over anywhere between 8 to 10 years, which is a very, very low amount of money. It's not going to create the millions of union jobs that we need in this country, particularly to recover from the pandemic. And it's not going to get us closer to meeting our climate goals, which are crucially important at this point in time.
So Cenk, we've talked about how important it is for progressive lawmakers in the House to vote as a bloc, and they can withhold their vote as a bloc until they ensure that they get progressive provisions included in the bill. It looks like that's what they're strategizing about, and there's also some strategy going on in the Senate as well, which I'll get to, but what do you think about it?
Yeah, so I want to talk about whether it makes sense to block a bill, force a vote, etc. So this is a good example of that. So first of all, should they block this bill? 100%. So overall, AOC was very aggressive in that interview, and she called out corporate Democrats, which never happens. So I want to give her tremendous credit for that. You say, oh, she should have done it 3 months ago, 6 months ago. I agree, she should have. I think she should have done it last term, okay? But let's give credit where credit is due when it finally happens, instead of bashing people when they're actually in the middle of doing the right thing. Okay, so I criticized them during the $15 minimum wage bill because different circumstances call for different reactions. Here she's doing the right thing, but even then I would say, yes, I would go a little stronger. She said, I doubt it. She should have said, no, there's no way we're going to vote for this bill. Because if you say you doubt it, it opens a door. You don't want to open this nonsense door. You want to slam it shut. Why? In this case, look, the COVID relief bill had a lot of good things in it, but it easily could have had $15 minimum wage, and we could have made that happen with public pressure. But they were worried about losing tons of good things in that bill. I disagreed with them on strategy, but I'm glad that the parts that passed actually passed. In this bill, no, this is a Republican-led bill, Republican-written bill, and they got 5 corporate Democrats who already agree with the Republicans to sign on to it. That's not a bipartisan bill. And it has nothing on climate change, unfortunately, as we predicted, because Joe Biden doesn't really want to do anything about climate change. That's what no one is telling you, right? He never fights for any of his so-called progressive agenda positions, none of them, because he doesn't actually believe them. So you have to force that out as well, but that's going to be for a later day. I would do it instantly, but I know they got to gather up wins as they're doing this, etc. Anyways, that's part of it, our strategy disagreements. But the bottom line is this is not a bipartisan bill for a second reason, because the American people want a lot more jobs created and they want infrastructure built. So it's actually another provision that is, and another bill that is very, very popular. So why don't you say to Dana Bash, hey, you call it bipartisan just because you got 5 Democrats working with the Republican Party, but the American people do not agree. The American people are on our side in a bipartisan fashion, saying yes, give me more jobs, yes, give us more infrastructure, etc. So, look, in terms of when to fight, here I'll address something that comes up every once in a while, because I get it. Look, some good folks were led in the wrong direction. On the Nancy Pelosi vote on her speakership, that was a very poorly designed strategy where they said, we don't have a backup option, we don't know what's gonna happen next, and we're gonna ask for Medicare for all, which is an enormous priority for progressives, but one we have to gain power and leverage to get to. They said, no, I don't care. Let's just do a stupid strategy right out of the gate that has no chance of working. So some people tell you should force every vote, no matter what, whether you can win, can't win, you have a backup plan, you don't have a backup plan, you have a strategy, you don't have a strategy. By the way, this is super important. Corporate Democrats and corporate media will tell you never force a vote. Under no circumstances should you ever do that. What is the correct answer? The correct answer is obvious. It depends. Of course it depends. How could it not depend? So in this case, what am I gonna do, vote for a Republican bill? No, the answer is hell no. Hell no, it's easy, it's obvious. You vote no, right? And then you get to the negotiating table. Same thing on $15 minimum wage. So this is a win, this is a bill that they can have, they cannot get Biden's version. To me, it's more important that they out the corporate Democrats than try to get past the Republican version of this bill. But they should vote on the Biden version. And it's so easy to create public pressure to vote on the Biden version because it's fair for AOC and progressive Democrats to say, hey, who's on Biden's agenda and who isn't? You all claim you're with Biden's agenda, let me see you vote that way. If you don't vote that way, then you don't agree with the agenda. Let's figure out who's on which side. And that is a very fair ask and something they could definitely win on.
So in the next video, AOC specifically addresses the way government is structured. And she's referring to the Senate filibuster, the legislative filibuster, which requires 60 senators to vote in favor of legislation in order for it to pass. And I think what she says here is important because the focus should be on a real restructuring of how these bills actually pass into law. Take a look.
Well, I think then the question that we have to make is that there's a fork in the road, which is, do we settle for much less and an infrastructure package that has been largely designed by Republicans in order to get 60 votes, or can we really transform this country, create millions of union jobs, revamp our power grid, get people's bridges fixed and schools rebuilt with 51 or 50 Democratic votes? And I think the argument that we need to make here is that it's worth going it alone if we can do more for working people in this country. With 50 votes, we have the potential to lower the age of Medicare eligibility so that more people can be covered and guaranteed to their right to health care, as opposed to 60 votes where we do very, very little, and the scope of that is defined by a Republican minority that has not been elected to lead.
And she's right about that. I mean, we've been repeating a similar point on this show in regard to passing some of Biden's agenda, which is, why are we catering to the demands of a party that lost in the last election. Bipartisanship isn't about, oh, we want Democrats, corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans to agree on everything and work together. Bipartisanship is ensuring that you're actually representing the best interests of the electorate, which happens to be Democrats and Republicans. You look at the polling, the vast majority of people, yes, Republicans included, are favorable toward the infrastructure bill as the way it was proposed by Biden. A $2.2 trillion bill that includes well-paying union jobs, that includes massive improvements to our infrastructure and a whole host of other provisions that are incredibly popular. And we're not gonna get that passed if we continue pretending as if this arbitrary legislative filibuster is the way to go, that it's somehow the more democratic way of doing things and that we need bipartisanship in the Senate. That ship has sailed. We're living in a different era. And if Democrats are serious about actually delivering for their voters, then they need to fight aggressively against maintaining the Senate filibuster.
I feel like almost everybody's already convinced on the filibuster that basically we keep yelling at the corporate media because they're the only ones left unconvinced. They keep going to the bipartisan, Senate tradition, all the horse crap of Joe Manchin and the Republicans. And we know the history of the filibuster. It was done during the Jim Crow era to defeat civil rights. That's what it was almost exclusively used for. It's not in the Constitution. It's not any of those things. The mainstream media, by pretending it's some sort of revered tradition, skews, while pretending to be objective, skews things towards the status quo, which is their top bias. They have a status quo bias. Now, along those lines, AOC did a great job in defeating one of their talking points. She mentioned right there, as I told you, this is a Republican-led bill. It's not a bipartisan bill. Great. The second mainstream media talking point that I would have gone after there is, she says, Dana Bash asked in that interview, well, I mean, how are you gonna get to 50? You gotta get to 50, okay? The beloved 50, it has to be bipartisan, right? No, wait a minute. You're making it seem like progressives are blocking the bill, when in reality, the corporate Democrats are blocking Biden's bill.
Exactly.
This is not Biden's bill. Biden's bill was $2.3 trillion. This is $579 billion in new spending. It's about a quarter of Biden's bill. So let me get this right. I'm blocking a quarter of his so-called bill. Manchin is blocking 3/4 of it, and yet you're blaming me? No, no deal. No deal. And now they are doing one good thing that's rhetorically catching on, which I like. They're saying no climate, no deal. If you don't have anything addressing climate change in this bill, you got no deal at all. Senator, and guys, I want to encourage you as progressive voters, you did a great job in reelecting Ed Markey. So for whatever other issues Ed Markey might have had in the past, etc., we told you that he would be more progressive than Kennedy in that race. And there were so many wonderful progressives on the ground in Massachusetts that swung that race. Markey was losing, you guys swung it in his favor through volunteering, donations, everything, right? And guess what? Markey's now leading the charge in the Senate going, no deal, no climate, no deal. That's how politics works. You use your power and then you could actually get what you want. So thank you for believing, having hope, and fighting for Markey in a way that is now, as you can tell, made the difference. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.